Hey everybody, welcome to our special webinar with a dear friend, Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. Kai-Fu, a pleasure. Great to spend time with you.
Thanks, Peter.
You look pretty darn fresh from literally just landing in from China, and then you're off to TechCrunch Disrupt, and you had a busy week in San Francisco.
Right.
All sort of getting ready for the launch of your new book.
Yeah, that's towards the end of a month. That's right.
So excited for that. I think we saw each other last briefly at Singularity University. Yes. And then before that, we spent time together in your amazing offices in Shanghai. So real pleasure. Let me take a second and do a proper introduction of Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. He is chairman and CEO of Sinovation Ventures, a leading technology-savvy investment firm focusing on developing the next generation of Chinese high-tech companies. And you have, is it like about $2 billion in management in Sinovation?
That's right.
Amazing. Prior to founding Sinovations, you were president of Google China, which must have been an amazing experience. We can talk a little bit about that if you want, or not.
Sure.
And then previously, you were an executive at Microsoft, at SJI, and at Apple.
Right.
Amazing. So pal, I want to talk. We're going to spend about 90 minutes, about half that time with you and I having a dialogue, and then half the time questions coming from yourself. And it's really, I mean, for me, the conversation I want to hit on are going to be around your views on AI. I want to talk about your views on the difference between entrepreneurship in China and entrepreneurship in the US. And I've had a chance to meet a number of the entrepreneurs that you backed. And then I want to go into sort of a conversation also on the future of work. I mean, those are sort of the three big things that we've spoken about. But let's begin on the book. I mean, you got your PhD in artificial intelligence.
Yes, in the 80s.
In the 80s. And who were you studying under then?
Raj Reddy at Carnegie Mellon.
At CMU. Yeah. Fantastic. And you've made your career out of AI. And I mean, AI has been around for, what, 50 years, arguably, as a subject?
Strictly speaking, 60 years. 60 years. Since 1956.
Okay. Yeah. And you've known Ray Kurzweil, who's also been with us. Yes. We'll be having a webinar with Ray very soon, too. You guys have been friends for a while.
Yeah. He's a great, amazing guy.
Yeah, and I love those conversations. But so, let's start. What led you to write this book now?
Well, I felt there are a lot of myths and misunderstandings about AI. There is the how fast superintelligence will come about question. There is the AI is so far away, I don't know what it is, I don't know when it'll come kind of question. And then there is a question about Chinese AI that I think many people don't believe or don't understand how China came to develop an AI and is about to match the US in the caliber of AI applications and usage.
In fact, I remember recently Eric Schmidt, who we both know, was at the World Economic Forum and made a very interesting pronouncement that his expectation that was within 5 years, and this was over a year ago, that he thought Chinese entrepreneurship companies and so forth would surpass the US in AI. Do you think that's true? What does that mean to you?
Well, I think it depends on how you measure. He was my former boss, but we didn't collaborate or discuss the subject. But I came to a similar conclusion, and I think his points are correct. But if we measure by market capitalization, one could argue China is already there. If one measures by real usage and value, probably 5 years is about right in applications, value created, types of algorithms used in products. And then if we discuss research, the quality of basic research, I don't think China is at all going to be ready in 5 years to surpass the US. So I think in this book, AI Superpowers, the reason I use the plural form is that
Voila.
U.S. has no worries that it will remain one of the top 2 leaders for the foreseeable future.
Superpowers, right?
Yeah, but then the more interesting issue is going to be U.S. and China will be so far ahead of every other country.
Yeah.
And I don't think people in the U.S. have ever experienced that, right? From the Wintel days to the Google, Netscape days, Yahoo days, U.S. has always been the singular tech power in the internet, mobile, AI, software space. Now they're suddenly emerged out of nowhere and equal power. So the world order is different from that sense.
Interesting. So I want to dive into some of the specific questions, but a few general ones first. So again, your purpose in writing this book is to make people aware of that biopoly, if you would.
Yes, right. The existence of 2 very powerful countries is, I think, the first point, that each has legitimately earned its place. And then I think the other important point is, what are the big issues that AI will bring about? And that I believe the future of work is the biggest issue. Yeah. And that whether it's the 2 superpowers or other countries or any individual, we should be aware that AI is becoming smarter, taking over more routine jobs. So the future of work, future of corporations, future of education, all of that will change in the next 15 years.
Sure. And it really is that fast. I mean, everything is changing. It's not our children or their children, it's our lifetimes that is happening. And I also want to talk a little about what kind of companies you're investing in, if that's okay.
Of course.
I mean, one of the things I found fun when I had the pleasure to take a group of my Abundance community members to China every year. We go at least once a year, and you've been fantastic in hosting us and showing us is some of the amazing companies that you're investing in. And how many unicorns have you had inside of Sinovation so far? It's a number.
Yeah, so we've funded 13 unicorns, actually 4 in artificial intelligence. So that's a substantial number, probably the largest.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning. If you were going to say, when did AI in China start to really accelerate? How long ago was this?
It's hard to believe, but 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So whoa.
Yeah.
So you think that the deflection point, and I mean, because I would have said for America, I would have gone back to the earlier days of Google, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would.
And 2 years ago for China. So what happened 2 years ago that started this acceleration?
Well, as I mentioned in the book AI Superpowers, it was the match between AlphaGo and Lee Sedol. Not quite Ke Jie, the Chinese superstar, the Korean superstar.
Yeah.
That match, because Go was a game invented in China, the Chinese people take a lot of pride. And also all the AI experts, including myself, have pronounced that it would take a long time, maybe decades, for AI to beat the human in Go. But AlphaGo proved us wrong by doing so 2 years ago.
It woke people up.
Woke people up and said, wow, this thing is amazing, and it's a lot faster than even the experts said. What if it's applied to other areas like banking and health and education? And that really drove, because everything in China moved so quickly. So much capital suddenly moved to fund AI. Every traditional company wants to learn about AI, and every internet company embraced AI. And also with a large market of users, it really took off in the last 2 years, to a point where arguably there's a little bit of a bubble right now.
Yeah.
Of course, we as Sinovation Ventures, we started investing 4 years ago.
Sure.
Because we saw this coming. But we really didn't see the speed, explosion that happened last 2 years.
Fascinating. And so the capital that's going into these AI startups, would you say it's all private? How much is public? How much is government investments in labs and such?
At this point, I think it's probably over 90% private. Yeah. To be sure, there's a lot of government funding that's going through. The government rarely invests directly in technology companies because no government's very good at picking the winners.
Sure.
The government usually participates by either rewarding individuals, rewarding excellent professors, returnees, and companies like that, and also government invests in funds, which will then the funds will invest in the AI companies. But the main thing about Chinese government is, I think most people think about the dollars as to what makes the Chinese government helping the Chinese companies. But actually, that's not the main thing. No. I think the main thing is the techno-utilitarian approach the Chinese government takes. That is, don't debate ad infinitum about the technology, just let it launch. Mm-hmm. And then if issues come up, tweak the laws. That's very different philosophy. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just what is done. And that causes technology adoption to be faster and iterated. The other thing is infrastructure building. The Chinese government is building highways and cities that will help autonomous vehicles be safer. Yeah. So that kind of mega spending, I think, on infrastructure, not on the funding of the companies, is what makes China kind of a unique place that can accelerate AI.
Amazing. So in the book, you talk about the 4 waves of AI.
Right.
Let's take 1 second and describe those, if you would, for our viewers here.
Sure. So if we look at...
we go to a couple of slides.
Yeah, just one slide for this. Yeah. It's easier to visualize. As you said, the internet AI was the first wave. These are really the same set of algorithms that underlie all 4 waves, centered around machine learning, in particular deep learning. These technologies that were advanced between 5 and 10 years ago are now finding applications everywhere because the technologies are generally applicable with some expertise involved to power a Google search and all the way to an autonomous vehicle. Mm-hmm. So if we think about application areas, I think they will come at different times. The earliest ones to hit are the internet applications. And the reason behind that is machine learning works by taking huge amount of data and with not much human intervention other than tagging the outcome. Mm-hmm. That is, you don't, if you want to build a application to give out loans, you don't have to teach it what specifically is important, income, address, or rental cost and things like that. You just feed all the information you can legally get on each person and tell it this person actually borrowed money and returned it. This person borrowed money and defaulted. And you give it huge amounts of data, and then the system decides what are the important features for it to look at.
And this is basically neural nets and deep learning.
Exactly, exactly. And then, of course, some human guidance is okay, but most of us would think we want to go in and program exactly how to give the loan. But actually, the more data and less programming actually makes it better. Yeah. So that makes it a magical black box that works so much better when you have more data. And coming back to our 4 waves, the first wave, not surprisingly, is the internet wave. Because where else do we have more data, right? The internet. All the clicks you have on Amazon or the Chinese Tencent or Alibaba or Google or Facebook, every click you make is showing some intention and showing some satisfaction, purchase, or something that causes the website to know more about you. Amazon would know what things you're inclined to buy, and therefore what things people like you are inclined to buy, and so on. So they can optimize the engine to either improve the user experience, increase the usage rate, the usage time, or to maximize their profit. So that ability in that deep learning black box enabled a lot of internet companies to make a lot of money because they now had a magic knob that allowed them to say, well, today we're going to make Amazon users more sticky, stay longer. Well, now we need to monetize them better. So it's almost like having a magic knob over your business. And that's why the current giants of AI are all internet companies. Sure. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. These are the 7 giants. Now, of course, any new internet company that's got 1 million daily active users, the Snapchat or the Pinduoduo from China, they'll be able to use AI too. So this will go on for the internet wave. The second wave is the business wave. And that's for corporations that have historical or stored data for legal reasons or other reasons, such as Banks have all the transactions of users. Insurance companies have all the claims of the users. Hospitals have all the illnesses and treatments and symptoms and whether people were cured or survived. They have those records. And those records can now be brought to bear and teach the machine learning system to perform the historical business process functions, such as banks giving out loans or deciding if a credit card use might be fraudulent, or hospitals coming up with ways of treatment, insurance companies deciding if claims are legitimate. So these business applications, typically buying AI from AI suppliers to plug into their business process, that's the second wave of AI.
You know, when I'm talking to executives from countries around the world, I was just down in Brazil for a week meeting with, I don't know, a few hundred CEOs. And one of the things that none of them truly realize is that their data that they have resident is an asset that they're not counting on their books.
Right.
So, I mean, everybody counts their assets, their IP, their cash in the bank, but they don't typically either say my data is worth this much amount of money to us on our books, or they don't do a proper job in actually recording their phone calls with interactions with their clients and so forth. But I think people are starting to finally wake up to this.
You're exactly right. This is a danger and a liability that traditional companies view the data repositories as a cost center.
Yeah, instead of a profit center, right?
Yeah, so the people managing them are, how do we save money? How do we back up the data, put them on cheaper storage, as opposed to how do we actively use it to make money and save money for the companies? So that mentality shift is going to differentiate the traditional companies that will win from those that will lose.
Yeah. Let's go with third wave.
Yeah, so the first two waves are with big data that already exists in some format. The third wave is very interesting. I call it perception AI. So you can think about it as digitizing the physical world, collecting information in our world that were transient, sounds, vision, scenes that really just go before our eyes, literally speaking, and we lose them. But now with perceptual AI, we can hear them and remember them, see them and remember them, and use them to trigger applications that were not before possible. So number 1 and 2 are doing things we could do before, but doing them better, saving money, making money. The third wave is listening and watching like we could never do before. For example, watching in a store so that people could autonomously pay for what they put in there. Amazon Go.
Yeah.
Right. And then listening to talking to your Amazon Alexa, Echo, and that speech gets stored along with the user intention.
By the way, is there an analogy for Amazon Go and Alexa already throughout China deployed?
Yes.
Did it start there first and Amazon copied it?
No. In these two cases, well, we can come back to Chinese entrepreneurism.
We will, yes.
They are doing some brand new things, excitingly, differently from US. But in these two cases, Amazon was the first.
Yeah.
And then the Chinese companies said, oh, let's adopt it in a different way. So I think the Chinese Alexa equivalents are getting to a lot of places. And in fact, the prices are much lower than Alexa. And the computer vision, however, I think the Chinese started earlier. The autonomous store, the Amazon started as a concept, but I think Chinese companies are launching it much faster.
Yeah.
So we've invested in a company called F5 Future Store that is doing autonomous fast food. So basically you go in, recognize your face, place your order, then it makes your noodles for you. You can eat there. And then we've invested in another company that is helping the grocery chain called Yonghui gradually autonomous enable their stores, starting with sales forecast, automatically using computer vision to count inventory, moving to customer tracking, online, offline integration, and then eventually to automatic checkout by computer vision. So we can see...
Yeah, to summarize then, wave three is, again, generating the data, through perception, through sensors.
Through sensors, not only cameras, microphones, but also heat sensing, motion sensing, depth sensing, 3D reconstruction, LiDARs, all kinds of sensing that allows a computer to basically understand what's happening in an environment, whether it's our face, our emotion, a car, a license plate, someone with intent to purchase, with the actual purchase. So all that becomes captured, making the operation, business entity, offline as smart as the ones online. Like today, Amazon, with every click you have, knows exactly what you did, what you want, what you don't want. But in the future, when you go shop in a grocery store, it will have the same knowledge, and therefore becoming much smarter on inventory management, sales, shelves to have put in, sales to have, discounts to use, and also teaching human assistants how to better help and assist you. It's not just a question of replacing humans. And that's just in retail. You can see that extending to corporate, to hospitals, clinics. You can see that extending to learning and education, schools. So it's really everywhere.
And your fourth wave is which?
Well, if the third wave added ears and eyes, the fourth wave adds hands and legs to the AI. So it can move about, it can manipulate, it can pick things up, it can do things with objects. That obviously is harder because it requires mechanical engineering, dexterity, and advances that aren't as fast-moving as computer vision, speech, and deep learning. But they will catch up. So the most commonly used example is autonomous vehicles. And that will migrate from fixed environments like forklifts, parking, and mining, tourist attractions, and shuttles to highways, and then to public roads over time. So L1, L2, L3, L4. Similarly, robots will start to happen in manufacturing. And then within manufacturing, they'll start with simple things like inspection. They'll go into warehouses, starting with simple things like packaging your box that Amazon ships to you.
So you're on the board of Foxconn, which is one of the now largest users of robots.
Yes.
And growing.
Right.
But when I think about robots, I think about what our friend Mark Raybert at Boston Dynamics is doing, which is some of the most extraordinary, at least visually extraordinary robots. Is there who's leading the construction of robots in China these days?
Well, there are a lot of companies, but the robots that are in factories don't look like Mark's robots.
Yeah.
Mark's robots have arms and legs, and they're like animals from Black Mirror. The factory robots are just machines. Yeah. They're smart machines. Think of it as Tesla factory, right? Tesla factory, in fact, uses robots from KUKA, which is now a subsidiary of the Chinese company Medea. Okay. So I think a lot of the leaders in the mechanical aspects are still in Germany and Japan. But through acquisition and partnership, China is growing in that space. Within Foxconn, we're starting more with the inspection aspects, which are more straightforward. And also, I think within manufacturing, having robotics take care of industries that are slow moving was more suitable than fast moving. What I mean by that is bicycles haven't changed for a long time. Yeah. Air conditioners haven't changed that much. So robots can be built to do the one thing that's needed to build them. But phones change all the time. Yeah. So humans can change as phones change, make small changes, but takes longer for manufacturing.
That's a fascinating idea. One question that's asked of me, and I want to hear your answer so I can become smarter, is when you look at the 7 tech giants in the AI world, is it a winner-take-all? In other words, at some point, their advantage over someone coming in is so much greater in terms of their intellectual, their data sets, their computational power. Yeah. Would you ever see, is this a runaway success? What are your thoughts?
I think it's definitely it's a great dividend for them and great expansion opportunities because in the consumer space, internet space, app space, these 7 giants have more data than anyone else, and it's easier for them to extend into new spaces that are contiguous and can leverage their strength. However, as we look at these 4 waves, it's unclear whether these 7 giants have an advantage in healthcare or in insurance or in schools or in retail or in factories or in autonomous vehicles. They're going to try, just like Waymo is the leader. They're from Alphabet, Google, but it's unclear that Google advantages will easily be leverageable into Waymo, other than the smart people and the deep learning algorithms. Yeah. So I think there will be a room for many other giants in the waves 2, 3, and 4. Although the first wave, they're likely to get most of the benefits.
Let's talk about some of the companies. So you've got $2 billion. What are the fun, most interesting AI companies that you've been investing in?
Well, we've invested in about 45 or so AI companies. Some of them are in areas where so in each of the waves, we have some companies. In the first wave, we have Meitu, which is an internet app that beautifies your selfies. So it uses AI to make, it's like Instagram, but except it's for selfies. Right. So it's an interesting application, but you got to first have the users, and then based on their behavior, if they save a photo, it's a good tag. If they delete it, it's a bad tag, and then you learn how to make people more beautiful according to their desires over time. So that's a wave 1. And then in wave 2, we have a unicorn called Fourth Paradigm. They basically help banks build up a customer profile, which includes not only all the bank's information about individual, but all the publicly searchable content of individuals, so that they can create an estimate of the individual's net worth and therefore have stronger targeting of new products to them. Let's say you have, $500 million, but you only keep 50,000 in the bank.
Right.
But the public records show you own a lot of properties and so on. So the bank should be smarter to target its investment products to you that are for high net worth individuals. So these are the smart things they allow companies to do. Not to mention, also includes, of course, credit card fraud detection, asset allocation optimization. So, and everything they do, once you use their platform, every one of the existing bank's normal processes become more optimized with higher user conversion rates for product sales, lower fraud rates for credit cards, and banks can really see money accumulate to the bottom line when they buy the software.
I talk to my digital members a lot about a few of the companies that you've introduced me to, like Face++.
Yep, that's wave 3. Yep.
Yeah. So what is Face++ able to do?
Well, Face++ started doing face recognition with the core technologies. They didn't know what apps to use. And then as they started probing apps, they found there were so many. They were invested by Ant Financial, which is sister company to Alibaba. And so, in the US, when you use a credit card and sometimes they think the usage is suspicious, so they call you and ask you 20 questions about where you went to high school. That's very annoying. I get those calls all the time with my US credit cards. But in China, actually people don't use credit cards that much anymore. They use Alipay, for example. Sure. And then they use Alipay and they look suspicious. Instead of calling and asking all these annoying questions, they just said, look at the camera and open your mouth, make a smile, go to the left side, smile again. This way, nobody can fake a face because you can't put on a mask or put up a picture, because they make you make faces, and then that validates you. Even though it's weird to make faces, it's a lot less annoying than answering 20 questions. So that was it's a big anti-fraud step they took. Yeah. Also, they're deployed in airports for passport checking, and also for we deployed them in our front door. When you came and visited us,
Yeah.
we opened the doors by our faces, so you could not get in without, you would have to go through the receptionist, but the receptionist can ignore us. We just walk through. We have no badges in the company.
Awesome.
So they found many, many applications. You know, obviously like iPhone, they have the unlocking with the face, and there are uses in financial, banking, corporations, security, and now they're moving beyond face, so they can actually in China, if you jaywalk, you could get a ticket automatically through face recognition.
I'm just glad they're not here in the United States.
Right. I don't think those would be popular here. No.
So it was. I remember another company you told me about was a company that is looking at manufacturing machine learning capability in a $5 chipset.
Yes. Yes. We have several companies doing chipsets. One called Horizon Robotics. They have been looking at consumer applications and the need for AI to get cheaper.
Yeah.
You know, high-end chips, NVIDIA makes them, but if you want them to go into cameras and the like.
Or my kids' toys.
Toys, yeah. Exactly. So under $5 is kind of a magic sweet spot that can go into the toy that would allow Amazon Echo capability into a toy. We actually have 2 chip investments. Both are unicorns. One is Horizon Robotics, and second is called Bitmain. And what they did is they actually started doing machines for complete systems and chips for cryptocurrency mining. And then they found that those chips have similar characteristics as the AI chips because both have to have very fast matrix multiplies. Then they branched into AI chips as well. And both companies are unicorns in our portfolio. These would be third, fourth wave. We also have 4 autonomous vehicle companies, one of which called Momenta is China's first unicorn in autonomous vehicle. They basically built a primarily computer vision-based L3 system and deployed it with a very clever mechanism. And they have a very fast way to build high-definition maps so that they can now add LiDAR and do L4 as well. So digital map is a very high-profit licensing business in an autonomous vehicle. And we have another autonomous vehicle company doing trucks, and another one doing non-public roads, so things like shuttles. And then we have a final one that's going directly to L4, and they've demonstrated they could run in very heavy rain and inside tunnels, really world-leading technologies in L4 autonomous driving. So
I coach a large number of entrepreneurs in my Abundance Digital community, and we spend time every day or every week talking about how to be a great entrepreneur, raising capital. I love the conversations we had when we were together about entrepreneurship in China and the difference between entrepreneurs in the United States, entrepreneurs in China. And there's some lessons to be learned that I want to share with my community. I remember just one of them, we walked away with an abundance community talking about 996 as a toast.
Yeah.
Let's jump in of what is it, talk about the entrepreneur in China who starts the company, what they're like, what's the ethos, and let's compare and contrast a little bit.
Yeah, okay. I think, the Chinese entrepreneurs start in a very tough environment with very little funding and just...
How long ago?
If you think about just when Netscape, when Google started, China had only, I think, less than 1% when Netscape started, China, US, in the late 90s.
Yeah, and when so Google's 98, 99.
Yeah, I forgot the exact date, but when US had 30% internet penetration, China had 0.2%.
Right.
I forgot which year it is, but it's a ratio of 150 between the two in penetration. So a lot of the early entrepreneurs, basically, they were copycats. And And for that reason, I think most people in Silicon Valley look down upon the Chinese entrepreneurs as well. They'll never be innovative. But that really proved to be completely wrong for the following reason. When the penetration was 0.2%, you didn't have enough of space to really try something. Experiment, right. But then as China market exploded to now 4 or 5 times larger than the US market, and then capital flew in, a magical virtuous cycle suddenly formed in the last 10 years. And that circle is a huge market draws capital, and then the capital creates smart VCs who will invest in and coach entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs will make great companies, and then in a very competitive environment, they will make great products, which then draws even more users on the board. So this virtuous cycle, once it starts running, it grows very, very rapidly. And another very unique Chinese characteristic is the competition is really, really tough. So in the US, I think the competition is fairly gentlemanly. Pinterest would say, okay, that's Instagram space, we won't do that. And then, eBay would say, okay, that's Amazon's expertise, so we'll let them do that. In China, it's like a coliseum. And then only one winner emerges, everybody else is dead. And that is the spirit in which... Brutal. So people actually are forced to come up with a lot tougher business competitive clever ideas. For example, on eBay, even today, you still pay money per transaction. In China, a decade ago, Taobao was free everything, except not for ads. Right? They make money purely off of ads, like Google AdWords. No, free to list, free to sell, even free to transact. But if you want to be noticed, you got to pay for that. That turned out to be a much more sustainable business model. And then the Chinese companies, look at Uber as an example. Originally a very smart company and with very good technologies, but a very thin layer of matching drivers and riders. In China, the Uber of China, Didi, what they do is they're not just investing in building the Uber layer for the ride sharing, they're going into buying cars, loaning cars, bank loans for buying cars and leasing cars from them, as well as car insurance and car repair.
Much deeper into the stack, into the financial stack.
And gas stations. So now suddenly when you're a Didi driver, you get all the benefits and they leverage off each other and get better services and also you can't lie about your traffic accidents because you're in the repair shop. So Didi gets more knowledge, they get to keep the best of the drivers, but another really important side effect of this, or you could say the main purpose, is that would not allow another lift to happen to Uber. Because if you have a new company that wants to come into the space, well, you don't get all the benefits from all that Didi offers its drivers. In fact, Didi drivers won't be allowed to drive for another ride-sharing company.
And here we see a lot of Uber and Lyft drivers both driving for both.
Right, and that's what happens when you have a lightweight approach. You look at OpenTable and Yelp in the US, nice light layer company worth maybe $1 billion or $2 billion. In China, Meituan is a $60 billion company. They hired 600,000 people on electrical mopeds to deliver food to the homes. So in the US, delivery of a eat-out is about $10 per order. For Meituan, it's about 60 cents.
So is it you're saying it's winner take all? Is there a one and two? I mean, there is both Alipay and Tencent has their own pay platform. So there is some duopoly there.
There can be. In most spaces with the giants, I think they will have enough leverage from their other businesses to ensure they don't get squeezed out. But smaller companies, when Groupon started in China, there were 5,000 companies doing Groupon-like companies. And only one left called Meituan. So it's truly a coliseum. And then now Meituan wants to get into other businesses. So they got into movie tickets, they won that one. And then they got into travel, they're doing pretty well. And then they now want to get into ride sharing. But as I said, Didi's putting up all these barriers, so it's not clear they'll succeed.
So I mean, as an entrepreneur, just take this in. So a couple of things. Let's talk about, first of all, one thing that you said to me that makes a lot of sense is a U.S. entrepreneur, many that I've backed through my venture fund or you've backed, view the U.S. as their primary market, and China is something theoretical.
Yeah.
But when you back a Chinese entrepreneur, how are they thinking?
About their primary market?
About the U.S., China and the U.S.
They don't dream of getting into the U.S. market either, because the markets are different, the dynamics are different, the demographics are different, language, culture are different. You have to learn a whole new set of stack when you move to the US. Like instead of WeChat advertising, you have to do Facebook advertising. And then the usage patterns and paying patterns are all different. So generally speaking, US and Chinese companies will each stay in its respective market. And then they might both expand to other adjacent markets with similar demographics. But there hasn't been much heads-on competition between the American giants with the Chinese giants.
What do you think about work ethic between entrepreneurs in both countries?
Well, I know that most of America thinks Silicon Valley is very hardworking, but when I take entrepreneurs from China to visit Silicon Valley, it's usually 2 sentences in conclusion. So creative, but so not hardworking. In China, a company that just went public recently, used to be a startup, used to advertise, come work for us, you can get work-life balance. We only need you to put in 996.
Yes.
That's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And that's considered work-life balance, light week.
Yes.
Many startups are 9-12-7, 9-9-7. I'm not advocating 9
that. To midnight, 7 days a week. I mean, people live to work. Yeah.
That is both a great thing for the entrepreneurial growth and a very worrisome thing when we think about the future of work.
I mean, I did find that, so a couple of the things that I found in our conversations in China that really woke me up. The first was the work ethic is a order of magnitude against traditional U.S. work ethics. But the second thing was the CEO in a Chinese entrepreneurial company really dominates. There's none of this opinions of the workforce. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think this may be cultural. It is
cultural, but still.
But also maybe based on what has worked and hasn't worked. Yeah. A lot of Silicon Valley companies' greatness comes from having multiple founders who have different expertise and roughly equal shares of the company or similar shares. In China, usually one person dominated both the decisions and the shares, and the company looked up to that individual for its vision, for when it's in difficulty to cheer people up and to make tough decisions about competition, new markets, and strategy. That made the Chinese companies more efficient, but obviously less ability to bring into bear lots of different ideas from all the people and build consensus.
Because I remember in some of our conversations, you described that when the CEO said, we're going that way, there was no question. No. The organization got up and marched in that direction.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Although the best CEOs are ones who will listen to people for their input and then make the decision, and knowing that the responsibility lies in him or her, but not feel like he or she needed no input. The other thing is, in the modern days with internet-related business, a lot of decisions are data-driven. So if there's data to help guide the decision, they don't tend to be wrong compared to just subjective decision-making.
Any other lessons that you think U.S. entrepreneurs can learn from Chinese entrepreneurs that haven't been shared, really?
I think the work ethic is one that's most striking, but I actually don't think that's the primary issue. I think the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs like really lightweight technical layers that lead to massive profits and don't want to do really ugly, dirty, sweaty work like managing 600,000 people on mopeds. But if you really want to build an impregnable business model, you probably have to dig deep, do the tough work. There are obviously American companies that do that. Amazon is a great example. And I think there's something to be said beyond the lightweight magic wand, 10 engineers make $1 billion kind of fairy tale stories. There's something to be learned about doing the really tough, sweaty, ugly work that's capital intensive, and that really makes your business impregnable. These 600,000 people who ride mopeds drove the cost down from several dollars per delivery to 60 cents. Mm-hmm. And that's what that changed the entire eating habit of the Chinese people. Because now people don't need to go to restaurants anymore. Because 60 cents per order can be absorbed into the price of ordering. So essentially, it's Amazon Prime, except now with Eat Out. And you don't even have to pay the Prime membership. So when you want a massive change like that, it's the hard work that it takes to optimize every little detail can and does matter.
Yeah, and I mean, you cover a lot of these principles here, and then layer on top of that the power of AI. Right. And I think one thing that makes China also prime for this is the access to that amount of data.
Yes.
I mean, everything is imaged and recorded, and the data is rich and usable.
Yeah, China has 3 times more mobile users than the U.S., but 10 times more eat-out orders because of what I described. Yeah. And then takeout orders, 50 times more mobile transactions, all of which are very useful data, 300 times more in shared bicycle ride data, which is actually IoT data. So that massive amount of more data will help train better AI models.
Yeah. So I mean, when you're thinking about starting a company, and we spend a lot of time talking about this in our abundance community, is besides where are you making your money, right? How are you driving towards cash flow, but ultimately, how can you be collecting unfair advantage data that is delivering value to your consumers, your clients, but also training up algorithms and capabilities that you have that no one else has. Let's go into our third topic, and then we'll open up to questions from you about any aspect of AI superpowers and Kai-Fu's work, which is the future of work. And you and I have talked about this a bunch. I spent a lot of time talking about this with my dear friend Tony Robbins. We talk about, Ray and I talk about this. We talk about this in the abundance community and at SU. What are your thoughts about robotics and AI? Are they killing jobs? Are you concerned? Are you concerned about people's meaning of life? What are your thoughts right now?
Sure. I think sometimes people want and give a simplistic answer to the question, but it's actually a very nuanced and complex answer because it depends on what types of job you look at. AI can be a job displacement agent, or it can be a great tool, or it can be irrelevant. Yeah. So if we want to separate that, one easy way I come up with to look at it is ask the question, what can AI not do? At least at present not do, right? And then so I'm going to show... And
also in the next 10 or 20 years, what can it not do?
In my projection. Obviously, yes. Ray may disagree and think AI will wipe out more of our work than I think, but this is my view.
All right.
So one aspect is the creativity of a job. If we purely look at the creativity angle...
We'll go to the slides here now,
Yeah, let's switch the slides. We'll see that there are repetitive jobs, routine jobs, and even optimizing job with advanced jobs like radiologists, which in 15-year time frame can be done by AI.
I would imagine in a 5-year time frame can be done by AI. But
okay.
I'm seeing amazing companies in that area.
Yes, I think there's also the adoption issue.
There is the adoption issue. Those damn humans are slow to adopt.
That's right, and the patients may not want it, and so on. But whether it's 5 or 15, it's a finite time frame. So this picture would have you worried because it only leaves very few jobs, like CEOs and scientists, for people to have, and a lot of jobs seem to be wiped out. But there is another angle that I believe we should look at, which is that of human touch and compassion. And if we make that the XY axis, that is service jobs that require a human-to-human interaction, compassion, empathy as the Y-axis, then we could replot these jobs, and you can see some jobs require a lot of empathy. Some people argue CEO shouldn't be at the upper right side, but maybe compassion, not clear, but empathy for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how do you manage the team and know what people are thinking?
M&A experts should be brutal, not compassionate.
Well, they need to understand human nature.
Okay.
They have huge human interaction. So the labeling is tough. It's compassion, empathy, knowing human, and interacting with human, all those things mixed on the y-axis.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've populated the right side and the lower left side, and we can see the lower left side is the really group that's endangered because they don't have that much creativity and they don't have that much human interaction. But what jobs remain? I would argue there are actually a lot of jobs that would grow in the face of AI. For example, a doctor they may have a great AI tool for diagnosis, but you don't want the cold tool to pronounce how many years you have to live. And you want the compassion, the people. I mean, you're a physician. I mean, that you understand how important the human touch is.
Well, put differently, and to share this with you, I remember when my father was passing away. He's in the hospital room, and you've got every specialist coming in and looking at his brain, his hips, his heart, but no one looking at the full patient.
Exactly.
Right, and so the question is, can you give physicians or healthcare workers a vacation from analyzing the data to look at the human and be compassionate in that regard?
Exactly. Yeah. And also, not nearly enough people have access to a good physician. The training of physician takes too long. So with AI, I think we can train a lot more, you can call it compassionate caretakers, who have medical knowledge, who might be somewhere between a nurse practitioner and a doctor today, and we can help all the poorer regions and countries, and you can visit patients at home, take care of elderly people, and there can be 10 times more doctors than today. The same with teachers, financial planners, beauty consultants, elderly caretakers, so that those jobs could increase, and we could even think about someone who would homeschool. And that could be a profession. Why should we not let that happen and have its compensation? Elderly companion, not just to cure someone but to talk to them. And older people don't want robots to talk to. So hotline specialists, there'll be a lot of social workers needed for the people who are displaced by AI. So my point with this chart is, if we want to think about the 4 quadrants, there's really the lower left side, which is basically going to be replaced by AI. People in those jobs should think about retraining. There are the jobs on the lower right side, which are the scientists, researchers, and people who invent new drugs, and people who write novels. They will use AI as tools to amplify their creativity, but mostly it's their genius. On the upper left side are the AI analytical engines wrapped around with human warmth, like the teachers and doctor example. And then the upper right side is largely still human, occasionally using AI as tools. So I think we need to recognize that depending on which type of a job, there is potentially a different outcome. And I think if you step back and look at the numbers, just as we saw about 100, 200 years ago, humans went through from agricultural jobs to manufacturing jobs. I think we're going to be looking at manufacturing and white-collar repetitive jobs to the empathy, compassionate jobs.
Interesting.
That is only segment large enough to absorb the number of people who need to be retrained.
And by the way, as you guys know, and as I talk about this and teach this, that the world's biggest problems, the world's biggest business opportunities, creating businesses around how do you retrain individuals and how do you make them AI literate and how do you really create that partnership is a huge opportunity for the future.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yes.
So I have a quick question here. So Ray projects human-level AI by 2029, and he's made that projection and he's sticking with it. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure. He and I had a dialogue at your university about that. Yeah. I'm not so optimistic that will happen. I feel that we don't have the engineering milestones that are known for that to happen. Certainly, it is possible, it is plausible, but if we look at how many breakthroughs do we need for that to happen, I would argue perhaps at least a dozen breakthroughs. Breakthroughs about common sense reasoning, breakthroughs about multi-domain planning, ability to conceptualize, and then also self-awareness, emotion. Those are all parts of our human capability compared to deep learning, which, while it's very accurate, it's just a pattern recognizer. So going from this super pattern recognizer to this all-encompassing capability, if it requires 12 breakthroughs, if we go back and say, how many breakthroughs have we had in the last 6 years of AI, I would argue we've only had one. That is deep learning. Okay. So if we need a dozen more, we had one in 60 years. So if we want to have a dozen in the next, 11 years?
Yeah.
I think it'll be, we'll need to see some momentum before I start to
But you have
accept.
You have to admit, the amount of capital going into AI now is growing by orders of magnitude. You've got Masa-san from SoftBank committing, hundreds of billions of dollars in robotics and AI.
Yes.
So you guys are going to find out, right? 11 years from now is not too long.
That's right.
11 years back was 2007, just before the financial recession. It's going to be a fun adventure ahead.
We'll see.
We will see. So AI Superpowers, by the way, is coming out when?
September 25th.
September 25th. So commend this to everybody. I mean, it's beautifully well written and with great story, and it's something you can consume over a weekend. And just, at the end of the day, if you're technically excited about the world, and if you get the idea that China is truly going from deceptive to disruptive, and AI is at the knee of the curve in terms of as a tool for an entrepreneur, and it's entering every single industry. There's not a single industry it's not going to be entering. Understanding how fast it's coming and where it's going, I think is fundamental. You can't ignore that. The other thing, by the way, is it's not a linear progression. It really is growing exponentially, and it's hard to think in that fashion. What I'd love to do, Pal, is actually open up to questions from our Abundance Digital community and dive in. So we've got
sounds great.
AJ here.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, we've got questions pouring in from the digital community and people watching the live stream. The first one comes from Steven from the US. He asks, as someone learning the technical side of AI, where should I focus my efforts now to set myself up for success over the next decade or two?
Okay.
Please.
Sure. Well, I think, Stephen, if you're into doing fundamental research, I think overcoming some of the fundamental problems of AI are the key areas to go after. Today, the brittleness of the AI or the fragility of AI are around, why do we need so much data? Why can we not generalize? Why can we not cross domains?
Compared to as a human can do.
Compared to human, And then why can we not truly understand and explain? So those are some of the things that are still basic research, but will have large commercial ramifications.
So, for example, a human might see 2 or 3 photos of a cat and be able to generalize what a cat is.
Exactly.
Versus an AI that probably needs to see
hundreds of thousands of pictures, if not more. The more, the better. So I think that those are the things, and I think Jeff Hinton has called for the research community to look beyond deep learning. And I'm sure Ray would agree with that. I think those are all good research directions. But if you want to capitalize on the commercial opportunities, then I think deep learning actually hasn't been milked nearly enough for its value. So it's a completely different answer if you want to go research or commercial. If you think about the 4 waves, deep learning is barely scratched the surface of all the applications possible. I would look for any area that's actually single domain, has large amounts of natural data and tagging, and can provide financial benefits, and look for entrepreneurial or large company or traditional companies that can quickly capitalize on that. So a totally different answer. One last thing I would say is the the barrier of you applying AI industrially is coming down. So don't assume that you're an AI expert and that without continuing to advance your capabilities, you will continue to have that status. We've got hundreds of thousands of students, if not millions, rushing in US and China, and the ease of use of AI is coming down a lot. So be thinking more about how to broadly get it adopted, not so much on the uniqueness of your expertise that you had up to this point. But we're now in the era of implementation of AI in the industrial sense.
Yeah, I would add the notion that that the number of students learning from everything from classically at the top universities in China and the United States, but also from massive online like MOOCs like Udacity is exploding. Yeah. One of the other things is if you can't be an expert in AI, you can be the expert in the problem space and then find an AI expert to partner with, right? Just the middleman's going to get destroyed in all of these processes, but if you understand the fundamental problems of a field or are great at deploying machine learning, deep learning, that's where the great partnerships are coming out of.
Right.
Awesome. Next.
We've got another question here from Francis who asks, what is your opinion on OpenAI? How do we ensure that no one company or country has the most concentration of AI knowledge and or power?
So this is an area you think about a lot.
Yes, yes. Well, the AI community turns out to be a very open and sharing one. Actually went all the way back to my thesis in the 80s. I remember my advisor, Raj Reddy, telling the funders and also to involve the National Institute of Standards and Technology to standardize on the data set and on which all participants who get funding need to use the same data set for training, and then when they show the results, they need to explain how they got it. So that had a massive impact because everyone can trust everyone else's results. And when someone got a good result, they would read their paper, others would read their paper and catch up as well. And then as time grew on, people shared their algorithms, they published their papers in real time on archives, even before journals and conferences, and then open source is full of good algorithms. So I think the research community is a force to be reckoned with. In some sense, it's naturally open, almost like the Linux movement. So I see that in those are the cultural DNA roots of the AI research community worldwide, and I think that's a very positive thing. Having said that, some companies do have a lot of amazing talent, and they can choose to not publish or share their innovations. So I think I think the likelihood that any one company will know something that they can hide when the whole world is progressing is not high. There are efforts such as partnership in AI and OpenAI, in fact, in itself, and other efforts that try to push people to be more open and to agree to certain principles of sharing what they have and not violating certain principles while they can still pursue their commercial success. So I think we're still in the early stages of corporate governance. I think managing countries is tough. I'm not sure how we ever control any one country to not keep its advantage. In fact, countries are not the power units in this equation. I see it as the tech giants are the ones who have the most at risk and therefore to protect. And then we see the academic community being very connected and aligned in wanting to be open. So I'm not as worried as most people are on this subject.
So George asks, Dr. Lee, what do you think could be the next wave, the fifth wave of AI, perhaps beyond deep learning and convolutional neural nets, et cetera?
Right. Well, I think Ray's coming on soon, right? I think Ray Kurzweil has a lot of bigger ideas. Those may very well become fifth, sixth waves, and so on. For example, a fully intelligent humanist agent that remembers everything in a corporation or for a person, that can recall, and a delegation interface where we can tell the assistants what we want accomplished, and it figures out the steps to carry those out.
A little bit of Google duplex there.
Yeah. I think Google and other companies are trying to get there.
And Ray also speaks eloquently and passionately about the whole idea of the brain-computer interface.
Right.
So, mid-2030s, 2033, 2035, where we're connecting the neocortex with the cloud, I think could be a paradigm for an option for a follow-on paradigm.
Mm-hmm. I think those are, it's hard to project too accurately going forward. Like when we started with the internet, people just had browsers and websites. Little did we know that portal, search engines, ads, social network, e-commerce, online to offline, mobility would all come about. So I think we're at a stage where I think we can sort of predict 4 waves, but we know in our hearts there will be 10 or 20 waves going forward.
Mm. So Paul asks an interesting question. He says, what are your thoughts on bias, both conscious and unconscious, in AI? How do we deal with that as a potential issue?
Yeah, that is a big question that's raised by a lot of people. AI is trained by data, so one argument is, therefore, it has less bias than people inherently. Okay, I happen to believe that for the most part, if you train it the right way. For example, think about giving out a loan. You could argue if a loan officer, so that depends on how do you label the data, right? If a loan officer goes in and says, this person looks good, doesn't look good, doesn't look good, you don't know what bias they have, gender, racial, and age, and so on, that are marked by the person. At least with an AI algorithm, determining to give someone a loan or not is purely based on past history of other people paying back the loan. So at least it's objectively separating the people who pay back from those who don't. Now, you could still argue and say, well, because of past biases and prejudices, we need to overcorrect to ensure that certain factors are not considered in giving out a loan. Well, then you as your bank can decide, okay, we're going to, let's take an example that I'm in the disadvantaged category, age. We're going to not let age be a consideration, not discriminate against old people, or young people for that matter. Then just remove age from your data. Then that you can intentionally avoid age-based bias that way. So I think there are various ways you could do. But every time you remove a feature from consideration by the AI algorithm, you have to understand you're making it less precise and less capable. And you just have to make that ethical trade-off. But I do believe, an example I really like in the book Second Machine Age by Bernofson and McAfee, they gave the example of biases in judges. And you would think judges are the least biased, but they studied in Israel, the judges give harsher sentencing before lunch compared to after lunch. When you're hungry, you're grumpy, So I would argue data in general will be less, be doing less bias, at least non-intentional, non-malicious bias. And then if we really want to further make it super unbiased, you can remove certain facts first from consideration.
So Dante asks, what is Dr. Lee's view on the timeline for quantum computing coming online commercially? What does quantum computing mean for AI?
Good question.
That's a tough one. I can't be certain about the answer, but I'll tell you what I think. A lot of people are studying quantum computing. There are optimists and pessimists, but I think there is general agreement that quantum computing will make a big contribution to the field of computing. The question is whether it's targeted in specific applications, such as security, or is it more broad to such as AI, or is it even broader that it could bring about AGI because it's so much more powerful? I think at this point I would tend to be a little conservative, and based on what I see and understand, I think for certain computations it will bring about some big breakthrough level changes. But I would be hesitant to jump to the conclusion that it would enable artificial general intelligence or dramatically change the field of AI. But it's an area that people publish, and we see results. And then based on progress, I and others will update our projections.
So Anita asks, will AI help demonetize education? How are you investing in education technology broadly at Sinovation?
Demonetize meaning make it cheap.
Or free.
Yeah. Yes, I do. But it's interestingly that it's through monetizing education that enables the demonetizing. So we fund a number of education companies. VIP Kid is probably the most well-known one that connects English teachers in the US with Chinese kids who want to learn English because there are not enough native English speakers in China. As you can anticipate, as it now gets to 600,000 pupils actively learning and paying American teachers, there's great data that could be gathered. And then AI could be applied to that.
I mean, you can basically have an AI observe and learn which English-speaking teachers teach the students the best, and then learn to replicate that.
That's right. I think the first step is like an Uber platform that keeps the good teachers and recommends the right ones for the right kids. But you could project, as I think you're thinking, can you simulate a teacher, right? That's very possible.
So it's important here, guys, just to think about this 1 second, which is when you think about Uber, you think about Tesla, and you think about all of the miles that are being driven, and you think about, oh, that's their business. It's where they make their money by, charging more and then paying the driver less. But the reality is the data sets that are being created about where people live and which people go to which locations, and then every time I drive my Tesla and it's an autopilot and I take control of the wheel again, and now the Tesla knows where I as the driver felt the most uncomfortable and sends 5 seconds of video before and 5 seconds of video later. All of that is learning. And so on VIP Kids, and I met the amazing, your amazing
Cindy.
CEO, Cindy there. She's incredible, driven, passionate, right? Her mission was to help connect, and number one, meet the needs of the student, which is give them access to great native English speakers in the United States. But number two, in the United States, we treat our teachers so poorly. They make so little money.
Yeah.
It's a great platform for them to make more money. But you wouldn't have thought about that all of the teaching and interactions is data creation, which is the true wealth that potentially is going to be created here in the long run.
That's right, exactly. And beyond that, we see in China companies that are doing pure AI education, for example, installed in classrooms, to take roll call and attendance, to tell teachers which students appear to need more help in what areas based on their classroom behavior. I know in the US that probably is not appropriate, but in China it does work. Also automatically grade exams for teachers. Also companies that do accent removal by AI. So they go back, they tell you to say something and then go back and tell you to say some words you don't pronounce right. AI that helps people target their weak areas foundationally in mathematics and so on. So all of these are ways that will eventually demonetize education and make it more broadly appealing. Also, but at the same time, it's pushing teachers to be more the human-to-human interface, right? So because the routine work like accent removal, math math exam
grading
are done by machines.
The manual boring stuff.
Right. So the teachers will be able to do more one-to-one. So the interesting outcome is that I think there will be a lot of AI that can reach people who can't afford most expensive education. But at the same time, those people who want to pay more will actually get more people attention. So there will still be tiers of education available. But I do think at a broad level, we can give a lot better education to a lot more people.
Let me, on the education front, because I have 2 7-year-old kids, I think about this a lot. There's a company here that I'm very excited about, based here in LA, that I'm looking at for an investment. What it does is if you have a lot of information, like in my Abundance Digital program, I've got hundreds of hours of content that I teach, and I have hundreds of hours of conversations like this digitized, my books, my blogs, and so forth. It takes all of this digital information and it trains up a simulated AI of you.
Yeah.
Have you seen companies like that in China?
No, not yet. So
not yet.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So the notion that eventually, Tony Robbins has been looking at this, given how much content he's created, Ray Dalio and others, that you can create an AI that's, if you want to have a conversation with Tony before you go into a job interview to get sort of psyched up, this AI can do a one-to-one training. But the other part of it is, I think about in the future, if my kids want to go and learn about the works of Plato, they could go into a virtual world and see an AI version of Plato trained on all of his writings.
Yes. I think those are all possible in the future. We are looking at some companies that are doing kind of the directive version of that. That is, the teacher is pre-programmed because conversations are harder because the student can ask anything. And even though you may have taught for 1,000 hours, it doesn't cover everything. And a few times that your answer doesn't match may create a bad experience. So another way to kickstart this is to say, well, the lesson today is to teach people the following, 10 words or 10 cities. And then the teacher is directive in teaching and then ask the student questions. So like today we're going to learn about fruits. This is an apple, this is an orange, this is a pear. Let's do a practice. Say something about the fruit. Right, and then the student says something and you correct the errors. That would be a lot easier to do because the teacher's directive. You don't have to handle anything from any subject from the student. Right. That tends to be the Chinese way of entrepreneurship. Start with something absolutely doable.
Constrained
and then grow over time. But I think we're headed to the same ultimate vision.
So Michael asks, as someone not born in China, how can you learn or break into the market as an entrepreneur?
Very tough. I don't recommend it. Just as someone from China wanting to come to start a company in the U.S., very hard. If you look at all the...
But if I were giving that Chinese student, I would say come to the U.S., go through a U.S. university program.
Yes.
Find a co-founder and start. I mean,
that would work.
Yeah.
Yes. So the only Chinese founders that succeed in the U.S. are those who've done what you've said. So the converse is true. If you really want to be committed to China, go over there, study, find a co-founder. Those are the ways to go. But if you've already founded a company that has very core, non-culture dependent technologies, you could look at the partnership at the company level. Like if you develop the greatest, avatar making technology that can create what Peter talked about in the teacher, then license that technology to a company in China and either get royalties or shares in a joint venture and let someone else there run it. Because as I said in my book, in AI Superpowers, US and China are almost parallel universes. To be able to travel between parallel universes is very tough. But to license your technology to someone in another universe, that is the simplest way.
You need a starship like the Enterprise and lithium crystals, and it just gets difficult.
Yes.
I mean, have there been any good examples of U.S. companies that have gone into China and established themselves as a leader in the industry?
Well, Apple is a great example.
But it's got so the iPhone is still the phone of the wealthiest in China.
Yes, yes.
And did it do that because of the relationship with Foxconn, or just was a better product?
No, it was just a better product. So if you can be Apple, you've got a shot. Microsoft is pretty solid in China, as are Oracle, SAP, IBM. So if you've got something to offer that's not available in China, that's possible. But in the consumer internet space, it's really hard to name even one company.
So Matt asks, how do you guys feel about universal basic income, and how will humans find meaning in a jobless economy?
Okay. I cover this in AI Superpowers as well. I'm not a big fan of universal basic income. I think it's a noble idea that once we make all this money that replaces all the jobs, then we should tax the rich and give people money. I think that general direction is okay, but who do you give it to, and what do you give it for? Universal basic income assumes a peanut buttering of money to all the people equally, to the needy and the non-needy, and I think that's too extravagant because $10,000 to each person in the U.S. that's $3 trillion a year. How are we going to tax that much money? But beyond that, there's the issue of when you give someone money in this kind of a huge job transition, I think with it comes the responsibility of helping to guide the person to a new career. So the money could be applied much better to people who are retraining for a job that isn't replaceable by AI, or providing elderly care, volunteering, homeschooling. So incentives towards that, I think, would sort of incent the behavior. But also, I think, as the person who asked the question mentioned, the meaning is very important, right? Too many people believe work is the meaning of their lives. And as long as, obviously in the long time that could shift, but for the next 30 years, we're stuck with that. And for people who believe that, if the job is taken by automation and the person sees that anything he or she can do is going to be done better by AI or automation, suddenly, even if there's UBI that removes the economic drain, the person is going to feel very demotivated, even depressed, subject to substance abuse or addiction to games and VR. It's just not a good combination. So I think we have to really think. It's not that the AI and automation is not just displacing jobs that's taking away income. It's displacing meaning for a lot of people and injecting that meaning back by retraining, by volunteerism, by doing meaningful activities to the society and finding back to the way on their feet. Those are the kinds of the right subsidies and programs to put trillions of dollars into if we have that much money.
Let me add on to that, Matt, what Dr. Lee said. At the end of the day, I'm not worried about loss of jobs, not allowing people to get access to food, energy, water, healthcare, and so forth. We're rapidly demonetizing all of those things. It's becoming cheaper and better all the time. There is a lot of people who give meaning to their life by virtue of what they do. They say, my great-grandfather was a bricklayer, my father was a bricklayer, I was a bricklayer, now these damn robots are laying the bricks better than I can, and so that is lost there. So a couple of things that are important there, and I'll just mention them. Number one of the ideas that I'm thinking about, because I spent a lot of time with Tony Robbins thinking about the future of work and the future of meaning in these future of work, is it may not be universal basic income, it may be universal basic ownership of a type. And let me just mention this idea that in the future, if I was an Uber driver and my car is all of a sudden autonomous, maybe I'm a part owner in that autonomous Uber that's going around delivering people rides, so that it's a fleet of robots who are in part working for me, and I'm earning my living through those robots. And so it's just, if you think about it, if you were the king and the queen and the meaning you had was your individuals, if your workforce working for you, are these robots the potential? The second thing is we spend a lot of time If you're not a member of Abundance Digital and you choose to become a member, we spend a lot of time talking about what is your massively transformative purpose? What is it that you're alive to do? Because if you're driven by a mission and a purpose, the technologies are always going to change, but you're driven by that purpose and you'll figure out new ways to fulfill on that purpose as the technology is becoming more and more powerful. And ultimately, this is the world we're living in. It's the most exciting time ever to be alive, but if you don't have a meaning and a purpose in your life, you're not going to have a chance to tap into that excitement ever. So purpose, and then what is your moonshot? What drives you, what wakes you up in the morning, these are the things that are critically important to master on page 0, line 1.
Right.
Yeah.
Great, I agree.
So we've got time for 2 more questions.
All right.
The first one comes from Pedro, who asks, what are your thoughts on privacy in AI? What will be private in the future, if anything?
That's a great question. And I'm going to answer it first, and then I want to see your point of view, because I think privacy is in part a function of cultural expectations. We didn't have privacy thousands of years ago. There are countries in the world where one does not assume privacy. And I know that a lot of technology right now, like maybe it's not Face++, but there's companies, there's software like LipNet that can read lips from videos. Yeah. I can go shake your hand, grab a couple of your skin cells and sequence you and know everything about your medical past and future. And ultimately I have to teach my 7-year-old boys that whatever's captured on Facebook or Instagram could be there for the rest of their lives. We behave differently when we're being observed, which is a good thing. And lack of privacy to some degree is what lets me sleep at night, because it's harder for people to do evil things when they're being watched. My point of view is, what's the perceived point of view, if you're willing and able to say, in China, and from an AI world expert, how do you see this?
Yeah, I think sometimes when people talk privacy, they want to just keep everything to, they want their cake and eat it too. You can't have the conveniences of Facebook and Amazon if you don't give them any of your data. So I think it is reasonable for there to be a protocol and regulations on what data you can permit them to capture or not. And I think Europe's GDPR is Europe's version of that. My guess is US will have a looser version of that. My guess is China will have an even looser version of that, but there should be something. And then there is the selling of your data for things that you didn't intend to authorize, such as Facebook to Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
And I think those things ought to be taken even more seriously, because that is clearly transgressing on whatever authority or licensing we gave to Facebook. And in fact, China takes that very seriously. Selling or giving away data by one company to another about its users is actually considered criminal and subject to imprisonment. And I think that's something to also consider, maybe taking a more harsher way to avoid that from happening.
So one last question, and this is actually one that is beyond technology, is much more human in nature. Amir asks, how did you, Kai-Fu, overcome cancer? What life lessons did you learn being so close to death?
Well, I was a workaholic. I attached my life meaning to work. And I think the most important lesson I learned from cancer was that this was wrong. And that when I faced death that could be months away, I found that I had no desire to work at all. That all of the things that meant everything to me all of a sudden meant nothing. And what was important were the people I love, and to be around them, to give love to them, and recognize in the past that I had failed to do that. So I decided to change my 997 work habits, and I spent a lot more time with my family and friends, and actually I prioritize them higher. Probably that's even more important than the number of hours. I used to do everything work required, then whatever I was free, I gave to my family. Now I see when my family needs me, and I attend to that first, Then what's left, I give to work. Of course, my family is understanding. They don't demand 6 days a week. You know, my wife, there's anniversary, birthday, and so on. And when she needs help, when the kids are home on vacation, I actually take off for them, regardless of what's happening at work. So it changes those priorities. Also, the other thing I'm aware now is that health is incredibly important. Without that, we have nothing. Yeah. So I'm a big admirer of a lot of the work that Peter has been and is doing in longevity and health. And we're also looking at how AI can contribute to that.
There's a great quote a friend of mine, Joe Paula, shared with me. God knows, maybe it's a Chinese quote. It says, the man who has their health has 1,000 dreams. The man or woman who does not has but one dream. And it's so true.
Yeah.
Kai-Fu, thank you, my friend. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for this fantastic book, AI Superpowers, and I commend it to everybody here. We'll talk about this in the Abundance Digital community, I'm sure, at length. September is going to be a rich month for webinars on this coming Thursday, September 6th at 11 a.m. Pacific time, in a couple of days. I'm going to be sitting down with Gabriel Rene, who's founder and executive director of the Versus Foundation. So I want you to think about the combination of VR, AI, and blockchain. And sort of if you saw Ready Player One, it's sort of the future of the Oasis. And Versus is working on creating sort of HTML for the three-dimensional virtual world. And what's enabled there? Is it going to be someplace where we spend a lot of our time working, playing, thinking, teaching our kids, and so forth? So get ready to dive into sort of the modern day earliest roots of Oasis from Ready Player One. And then we're going to be going there on September the 14th, a phenomenal webinar with a dear friend of both of ours, Ray Kurzweil. We'll be talking about brain-computer interface. That's going to be at 12 noon, again, for our Abundance Digital members. Ray and I are going to be talking about many of the same subjects, but going on deep dive into human longevity. We're going to be doing a deep dive into brain-computer interface. I'll be asking Ray about why does he think 2029 is the year that we're going to have human-level intelligence, and what is the singularity, and why he's been able to pretty consistently make predictions about the future. So he'll be there to answer your questions as well. And then finally, our third webinar is with a dear friend, Jim Giannopoulos, who's the chairman and CEO of Paramount Films, previously the chairman and CEO of Fox. He's the guy who greenlit Avatar. And we're going to talk about the current and future of the motion picture industry, how, again, AI is starting to render characters, and what we're going to be doing in the virtual world. And I'm going to be nailing him on what is Paramount doing with their Star Trek properties in film. So a lot of fun this month. Please join me. And if you're not a member of Abundance Digital, I commend you to join. These are the conversations we have every day that will change your life. It's about, it's really, I think you appreciate this, Kai-Fu. Our lives are who we go through life with. It's a community we spend time with.
Absolutely.
And so if you happen to be in a place where you don't have people talking about all these exponential technologies and going after your passion, creating a community or being part of a community where you can have those conversations is critically more important than ever before.
Yeah, I think what you're doing with Abundance is phenomenal.
Thank you, my friend.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for spending time with us. Thanks. See you, everybody. See you very soon.
Bye-bye.